In the winter of 1939, on a lane called Hollowway in the county of Blackmere, there stood a theater that the maps had excised. The Marrow Playhouse was a bowed thing of iron and glass, its marquee eaten to lace. Villagers spoke of it in half words, of a visiting company from London, of a single performance that left the town altered, as if some invisible ledger had been turned. My father's scissors box held the first proof. Elias Ward kept records like a cautious priest. His ledger listed names and small deaths. In his hand, I found a brittle clipping dated 9 of February 1940, a column that spoke of Conrad Hale, the Playhouse director, and of 7 rendered speechless, 12 unquiet. It was the sort of sentence meant not to be read aloud. In 1976, drawn by a duty that was half grief, I walked Hollowway. The Playhouse crouched behind a fence of twisted iron. I climbed the gate and found the auditorium sloughed in dust. Velvet seats lay gone to mildew. Behind the proscenium, I discovered Hale's appointment book, its pages full of times and initials. 11th of March, 1939, H.M. 14th of March, M. At April, boarding house. 3, quiet, assured. The ink trailed in places, as though the hand that wrote it had been hurried. Tucked beneath the appointment book was an envelope addressed to those who still listen. Inside were 6 photographs, a stage lit by lanterns, figures in expressionless white masks, a row of children in the front seats, eyes wide and mouths set. On the back of one photograph, in a hand cramped and certain, someone had written, "Measure the mouth. Teach the room to keep its counsel." Old folk told fragments. Mrs. Anselm, who sold ribbons by the quay, recalled men in uniform who arrived the morning after the performance. They wore masks, she said, and they counted. They moved like reeds. She would not give the name of the authority. A landlord named Price produced a charred page salvaged from Hale's boarding house. Fragments of phrases remained. Resonance, diminution. The river answers when taught to listen. Diagrams showed circles drawn upon circles upon a stage plan, arrows that met and became loops. In a margin, Hale had written, as though to himself, "We are less than a stage. We are a machine that unmans the tongue." The more I read, the clearer the device became. Hale's theater had been built not merely to act, but to attune. Plays were instruments. The masked figures were operators. They did not seek applause. They sought a unified answer. They tuned lungs and ears until the audience folded into itself. One receipt named the payer. Society for Acoustic Studies, London. Later, that society dissolved as if into fog. Children were placed foremost. The photographs showed them in prime rows, their small hands clenched, their faces fixed as if set with wax. A neighbor's niece, Lily Anselm, had been among them. She returned from the night changed. She taught her family to hush, to wait for the light in the mouth, and afterward she thinly smiled as if a room had been planted inside her chest. There were pills found, a bitter residue in a phial beneath a floorboard. A chemist's mark appeared in Hale's accounts for tinctures to steady the nerves. The compound dulled the vocal act and sharpened the inward ear. It taught the body to listen until listening itself became the instruction. Jonas Breaker, the old man who tended the wings, spoke in ellipses. "We wanted an audience that answered as one," he told me. "We folded sound inward to pull out what slept beneath names. Of the masked figures," he said, "they were men of measure. They measured the throat's throb and kept the counting. On a night of damp fog, I returned to the Playhouse determined to watch. A procession came down Holloway. Men in long coats and hoods, their faces hidden. At their center, a child carried a lantern whose flame consumed no air. They entered the theater as if returning home. From the auditorium came a sound like a throat clearing. The child lifted the lantern and spoke a sentence into the dark. I felt the syllables settle into my breast, not heard but inherited, and learned in an instant the precise order by which the house was taught to answer. I fled. In the morning, the theater's oak door bore fresh marks, symbols scored into the wood like seeds. I copied them. The symbols matched those in Hale's margins, a dot within a ring. I published nothing. Words are invitations. I feared to call the measure wider. Still, forgetfulness began like mildew. Names slipped from neighbors' mouths. Noon bells miscounted. A teacher misplaced the days of the week. A child in the next village recited an odd verse no adult had taught him, a cadence of numbers and breaths. I attempted to leave Blackmere. Each time I reached the road, my intent unraveled. I returned to the ledger as if pulled by a current. The device had not died with Hale. It lived in habits and ledgers, in children's shoes left upon stages. In 1984, a cottage on Hollowway burned. Among the ash was a child's shoe, unmarked by flame. The coroner recorded cause undetermined. In the ledger, under 3rd of June 1984, a hand not Hale's had written, "We teach the hush. We will not leave it idle." The initials below were mine. EWI am Elias Ward's son. I had sworn to bury the thing. I had wrapped photographs and the shoe and the book in oilcloth and hidden them. I told myself secrecy was preservation. But the hush moves like water seeping through mortar. It is mimetic. It is taught wherever listening can be grafted. Sometimes, when the fog swells against the window, I see shadows of figures in the lane, not passing, but paused, as if reading a page held to their faces. Once a friend, a mason, woke with his hands stained not with mortar but with ledger ink. He could not say why, only that numbers had mapped themselves beneath his fingernails. I have counted 5 such occurrences among those who once brushed the playhouse's dust, mislaid memories, sudden silences at meals, lullabies that repeat a strange refrain in the throat. It spreads by habit, by listening. I burn what I can, but ash remembers. Even the smoke can teach a new way to hear. We are small and the hush is patient. So I write this by the light of a small lamp that keeps the moths close. If you seek the Marrow Playhouse, know the facts. It sits on Hollowway, its marquee eaten to lace. Its emblem is an eye. Its director was Conrad Hale. The date of the ruined performance was in the spring of 1939. These are anchors that may help, or they may only be bait. If you find the stage, do not look for actors. Seek instead the traces. Children's shoes, photographs, a ledger with names paired to seats. If you hear a child speak of the light in the mouth, close your shutters, count the rings of your fingers, and speak your true name aloud, once, plainly. Names are ballast. They may keep the hush from taking root. I have tried to drown what I could not carry. I cast the child's shoe into the black water of the quay and watched it vanish like a belief. For a time I thought the tide had taken the hush with it. But memory is a slow thing. The ledger is here on my shelf. Tonight its pages shift under the draft of the house. I have told myself that to write is to keep counsel and to unmake the measure by unfixing its pattern. Perhaps it is vanity. If you are tempted to witness, remember this. The playhouse's door is not the only entrance. Silence is porous. It lives in ledger lines and lullabies in the exact manner one child holds a lantern that consumes no air. Do not offer your tongue to it. Keep your seat vacant. For Conrad Hale left a last note in the margin of his book, a direction rather than a confession. Teach the room to keep its counsel. I kept counsel largely because I had no other answer. If these words reach you, then the hush has learned another voice. And if you come upon a child bearing a lantern that consumes no air, shut the door and walk away. For the final thing the Playhouse taught is this. Those who learn the hush will never in the end speak of it again.